Am I wrong for cutting off my parents after they called me a failure? The day my mother called me a failure was the day I realized some bridges are meant to burn. I built my entire life from scratch, but to my parents, I was still the daughter who got away. They say blood is thicker than water, but what happens when that blood feels like poison? At 27, I owned a house, had a career, and independence. But in my mother's eyes, I had lost everything that mattered. I never imagined that buying my first house at 23 would feel like a rebellion. But when I called my parents to share the news, expecting excitement or pride, the first thing my mother said was, "Well, that's nice, dear, but a house is just a house. What about your soul?" That was 5 years ago. I am 27 now, and that conversation feels like it set the tone for everything that followed. Growing up, our home was built on faith. Morning prayers, evening prayers, church 3 times a week, Bible studies, youth group, mission trips. Faith was not just part of our lives. It was the architecture of our entire existence. My parents were respected in our religious community. My father served as a deacon. My mother led the women's ministry. We were the family everyone pointed to as an example, and I played my part perfectly. I sang in the choir, I memorized scripture, I volunteered, I dressed modestly, I said all the right things. I was the good daughter, the one who would grow up to marry a nice man from church, have children, and continue the legacy. But inside, questions were growing. Doubts were sprouting like weeds in carefully maintained garden beds. By the time I turned 20, I knew I did not believe anymore. By 22, I could not pretend any longer. I left religion entirely that year. It was not a dramatic exit, not a rebellious outburst. It was quiet, personal, and deliberate. I simply stopped attending church. I stopped praying. I stopped living as if I believed something I did not. For a year, I kept this truth from my parents. I lived 600 miles away by then, so it was easy to avoid the conversation. But the weight of the secret grew heavier with every phone call, every holiday visit where I had to pretend to be someone I was not. When I finally told them, I was 23. I rehearsed the conversation 100 times. I chose my words carefully. I tried to be respectful, to acknowledge that this was my journey, and not a rejection of them personally. It did not matter. My mother cried for hours. My father paced the room, his face cycling through confusion, anger, and something that looked like grief. They asked where they went wrong. They asked if someone had influenced me. They asked if I was angry at them, at God, at the church. They could not, would not, accept that I had simply examined my beliefs and found them lacking. That night, my father told me I was no longer welcome in their home until I came to my senses. My mother called me the next day to say they had prayed about it and decided to give me another chance, but only if I agreed to speak with their pastor. I declined. They disowned me again the following week, then reached out 2 weeks later as if nothing had happened. This cycle continued for months. One day I was their daughter, the next I was a stranger leading herself to destruction. The emotional whiplash was exhausting, but I held on because I loved them, because despite everything, I wanted them in my life. I just wanted them to accept that I could be in their life as someone different than who they raised me to be. A year after my confession, I made a mistake. I trusted my mother with something deeply personal. I had been seeing a therapist to work through some of the religious trauma I was experiencing. In one of our sessions, I had a breakthrough about why I struggled with certain aspects of my identity. It was profound and personal, and in a moment of vulnerability during a phone call with my mother, I shared it with her. I asked her explicitly to keep it between us. She promised she would. 2 weeks later, I received a message from someone in my extended family asking if I was okay, and if I wanted to talk about what I was going through. My stomach dropped. Then another message came. Then another. My mother had told someone from her prayer group, framing it as a prayer request. That person told someone else. That person told someone else. Within days, something I had shared in confidence became community knowledge, twisted and misinterpreted through a game of telephone. I was humiliated, angry, betrayed. When I confronted my mother, she cried and said she was only trying to get prayer support for me. She said she was worried about my soul and thought getting others to pray would help. She could not understand why I was upset. After all, she had good intentions. I wanted to cut them off then. Every instinct told me to protect myself, to create distance, to stop giving them ammunition to hurt me. But guilt is a powerful thing, especially guilt instilled from childhood. I forgave her. I set a boundary, do not share what I tell you in private, and moved on. But I noticed after that conversation that she still talked. I would mention something casually, and later hear it repeated back to me by other family members with editorial commentary added. Nothing as embarrassing as that first incident, but constant little violations that reminded me I could not truly trust her. I stopped sharing anything real. Our conversations became surface-level exchanges about weather and work and nothing of substance. It was safer that way. The preaching never stopped. If anything, it intensified. Every conversation, no matter how mundane, became an opportunity for my parents to remind me of what I was missing, what I was risking, where I was headed if I did not change. I could not mention getting a promotion without hearing about how God was trying to bless me back to the faith. I could not talk about my friends without questions about whether they were believers. I could not express happiness without it being redirected to what would make me truly happy returning to church. The corrections were constant and suffocating. I got lucky with this opportunity, I would say. "You mean God blessed you," my mother would correct. I worked really hard for this, I would mention. God God gave you the strength, my father would interject. It happened hundreds of times, thousands maybe. Every phone call, every visit, every text exchange. They could not let me exist as I was. Every sentence I spoke needed to be edited, revised, corrected to fit their worldview. I tried to set boundaries. I asked them to respect my position as I respected theirs. I explained that I was not trying to change their minds, and I would appreciate the same courtesy. I begged them to just let me live my life without constant commentary. They exploded. I was ungrateful. I was disrespectful. I was rebellious. I was going to get what was coming to me, a phrase my father used that sounded less like concern and more like a threat. After that conversation, I started avoiding their calls. I would let them go to voicemail and text back later with an excuse. I visited less. I kept them at arm's length because being close to them required constant vigilance, constant defense, constant emotional labor that left me exhausted. My mother would cry and say I was pulling away. She was right, but she could not see why. If religion was the crack in our foundation, politics was the earthquake that widened it into a chasm. I do not know when exactly my parents' faith became so entangled with a specific political ideology, but by the time I was in my mid-20s, they were inseparable. To question one was to question the other. To disagree politically was to disagree spiritually. And we disagreed, fundamentally, dramatically, completely. I watched them share things on social media that contradicted everything they claimed to believe about compassion and kindness. I listened to them speak about entire groups of people with contempt and dismissiveness. I saw them align themselves with positions that seemed antithetical to the teachings they raised me on. When I pointed out these contradictions, gently at first, they became defensive, then angry, then accusatory. I was brainwashed by liberal universities, they said. Even though I went to a state school and studied business, I was a product of mainstream media, even though I tried to read from multiple sources. I was a snowflake who could not handle different opinions, even though I was the one trying to have a civil conversation while they hurled insults. I tried everything to avoid political topics. I would steer conversations away, change the subject, redirect to neutral ground, but they pushed. They wanted to talk about it. They wanted to convince me, to argue, to prove me wrong. One particular phone call stands out. My mother started talking about immigration, and within minutes she was saying things that made my skin crawl. Racist things, hateful things, things that contradicted everything she claimed to believe about loving your neighbor. Mom, I need you to stop, I said, my voice tight. If you keep going, I am going to hang up. She did not stop. She escalated. She got louder, more insistent, more cruel in her characterizations. I gave her another warning, then another. Finally, I said, I am hanging up now. Call me when you are ready to have a respectful conversation. I ended the call and sat in silence, my hands shaking. 5 minutes later, she called back. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. She was crying, sobbing actually, saying she was sorry, that she did not mean to upset me, that she just got passionate sometimes. Then, in the middle of her tears, she said it. I failed you as a parent. Those words hit me like a physical blow. I failed you as a parent. I sat frozen, the phone pressed to my ear, unable to speak. She continued crying, talking about how she must have done something wrong, how she raised me in the faith and I turned away, how she did not know where she went wrong. And all I could think was, if you failed as a parent, that makes me a failure. That is what she was saying, was it not? That I was the evidence of her failure, that my life, my choices, my independence, my success, none of it mattered because I did not believe what she believed. I am 27 years old. I bought my own house at 23 with money I earned myself. I moved 600 miles away from everything familiar and built a life from scratch. I have a career I am proud of, friends who support me, a home I love. I am financially independent, emotionally healthy, and genuinely happy. And I am a failure because of one thing, because I do not share their faith. I am the only woman in our entire extended family who has built something outside of being a wife and mother. Not that there is anything wrong with those roles. They are valuable and important. But I wanted something different. I wanted more. I worked for it. I achieved it. And it means nothing to them. Do you understand what you just said to me? I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. What? I'm just upset, honey. I love you. You said you failed as a parent. Do you understand what that means? If you failed as a parent, that makes me a failure. That is what you are saying. No, that is not what I meant. Yes, it is. That is exactly what you meant. Nothing I have accomplished matters because I do not believe what you believe. I could cure cancer and it would not matter to you because I am not in church on Sunday. You are twisting my words. I am not. I am finally hearing them clearly. I told her I needed space, that this hurt more than anything else they had said or done over the past 5 years, that I had put up with the disowning, the broken trust, the constant preaching, the political arguments, all of it, because I loved them and wanted them in my life. But being called a failure, even indirectly, was something I could not accept. She did not understand. She tried to backtrack, to explain, to minimize, but the words were out there. They could not be unsaid. I ended the call and sat in my living room, in my house that I bought with my money, and cried. The next few days were quiet. No calls from my parents, no texts, just silence. Then the messages from other family members started coming. An aunt texted asking what happened and saying I should be grateful my parents care so much. A cousin called to say I was being dramatic and that parents say things they do not mean sometimes. An uncle sent a long message about honoring your father and mother and how family is forever. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone thought I should let it go. Everyone expected me to forgive and move on, just like I always had. And maybe that was part of the problem. I had let so much go over the years. I had absorbed their rejection, their judgment, their broken trust, their constant corrections. I had bent and flexed and compromised and endured. I had set boundaries that were immediately trampled. I had asked for respect that was never given, and they had come to expect it. My forgiveness was assumed, my capacity to tolerate their behavior was taken for granted. So when I finally said enough, they were shocked. They could not understand why this was the line. Why not all the other things? Why this? Because this cut deeper. Because being called a failure, even indirectly, even unintentionally, struck at something fundamental. It invalidated everything I had worked for, everything I had built, everything I had become. I tried explaining this to the family members who reached out. Most did not want to hear it. I was being too sensitive. I was overreacting. I was letting one comment destroy my relationship with my parents. But it was not one comment. It was 5 years of comments. 5 years of judgment and rejection and conditional love. 5 years of being told in 1,000 different ways that I was not enough because I did not believe the right things. This was just the moment when I finally stopped accepting it. My parents eventually reached out. A week after the phone call, I received a long email from my father. It was full of scripture and reminders of how they raised me and expressions of love wrapped in disappointment. Nowhere in the email did he acknowledge what my mother had said. Nowhere did he apologize. Instead, he asked when I was going to stop being stubborn and come home, spiritually and physically. I read it 3 times looking for any hint of understanding, any recognition that they had hurt me. There was none. I am sitting here now, trying to decide what to do next. Part of me wants to forgive them, to explain one more time why this hurt, to give them another chance to understand. That is what I have always done. That is the role I have played in our family. The one who bends, who accommodates, who keeps the peace, who... But another part of me is exhausted. Exhausted from years of trying to maintain a relationship with people who cannot accept who I am. Exhausted from being told I am wrong, broken, lost, rebellious. Exhausted from having my accomplishments minimized and my choices questioned. This is not about one comment. This is about a pattern. A pattern of conditional love, of judgment disguised as concern, of boundaries that are requested but never respected. My whole family says I am being dramatic. They say I should be grateful my parents care enough to fight for my soul. They say family is family, and you do not walk away over hurt feelings. But is it dramatic to finally say enough? Is it wrong to protect myself from people who, despite loving me, consistently hurt me? Is it selfish to choose my own peace over maintaining a relationship that requires me to constantly defend my existence? I keep coming back to that moment on the phone. My mother crying, saying she failed as a parent, and the implication, whether she meant it or not, that I am the failure she produced. I have been told to forgive, to let it go, to be the bigger person, to remember that they mean well, to understand that their faith makes them act this way, to give them grace. But who gives me grace? Who protects me? Who says my feelings are valid, my hurt is real, my boundaries matter? Maybe drawing a line in the sand should have happened years ago. Maybe I should have established consequences the first time they disowned me, or the first time my trust was broken, or the 100th time they corrected my words to fit their narrative. Maybe I am wrong for suddenly enforcing a boundary they have never seen before. Maybe it is unfair to finally say this is too much after years of saying everything else was okay. Or maybe I have finally learned that I cannot set myself on fire to keep other people warm, even if those people are my parents. I do not know if I will forgive them this time. I do not know if I will continue trying to maintain a relationship that requires me to shrink myself to fit their expectations. I do not know if love is enough when it comes with so many conditions. What I do know is this: I am not a failure. I am a woman who built a life she is proud of, who made hard choices, who walked away from comfort for authenticity. I am financially independent, emotionally growing, and learning to stand up for myself even when it is hard. If that makes me a failure in their eyes, maybe the problem is not with me. So I am asking, not just my family, but anyone who reads this story, am I wrong for not forgiving them this time? Am I being dramatic for finally drawing a line? Should I let this go too and trust that somehow, eventually, things will change? Or is it okay to finally say that I have given enough, forgiven enough, endured enough? Is it okay to choose myself this time? I honestly do not know the answer, but I am tired of pretending the question does not matter. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have experienced something similar with your family, please know you are not alone. Sometimes the hardest thing is choosing between the family you were born into and the peace you need to survive. Whatever you decide, your feelings are valid, and your life has value beyond what anyone else thinks of your choices. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking, commenting your thoughts, and subscribing for more honest conversations about family, faith, and finding yourself. Your support means everything.